Okay, I want to go over a couple progress I made on my DPM G3 conversion using an HK modified trigger pack. What I did is, it's a G3 trigger pack, but when I did this, although this will fit the gun, you have to modify it to cut the tail off and put the hole in the correct location. Otherwise, it's just not a drop-in fit, but the hole spacing is dependent on where you put this in the frame and this. A couple things I did, the standard G3 semi-auto mods to make a denial. Although this is modified to fit my gun, I wanted to make sure that you couldn't take a stock G3 trigger pack and drop in here. So what I did is, I don't know if you can see the block in here, I put a denial block, welded this in, both sides and the bottom, and that corresponds with the cutout for the semi-auto HK shelf. And what this does, this cuts out the area for the auto sear that it wouldn't be functional anyway. So when this drops in, this nets out really, there's no rock, it fits tight, and it's a good denial. The other thing that I did, you put the semi-auto return sear trigger, or the sear spring here, and this is from HK Parts Net. It's one of the $10 springs, it's good. The other mod you have to do, you can't see real clear here, but you have to drill and put a pinhole through here, and what this is a stop for the trigger, that even if you have the selector in the full auto position, this will only function semi-auto. It stops the trigger, from rolling around to the full auto position. So yeah, there it is. Duh. So if the trigger stop in, you got semi, then even if you roll it in a full, without that trigger stop pin, the hammer is going to follow and you'll get misfires. So that part is the denial for the G3 section. This was the modified DPM 28 section that you can see. I cut this off. This is still rough right now until I get done. Added this bushing, and this is for the push pins for the lower. That way, you have a mounting thing, it can swing down. So I did that by adding this piece of steel. I don't know if you can see it very good, but it's got a bushing on it. It's welded all the way around. This one, you have to be careful. It goes through at an angle. There's a weld, so if you drill this, you want to pilot drill it, step drill it up. That way it stays on center, your drill doesn't walk. This part was the old housing where it was milled out, so this has a slug that I milled out, pressed in, and TIG welded in place. So this is pretty solid and unitized. So let me put this together, two hands. So it hinges down and it goes up. So what I have here is, you can see that the hammer travels in this clearance slot. So the one problem that I saw right off the bat was this hammer height. I can do this with two hands. There we go. You can see the hammer, how close it comes to hitting the recoil spring and guide rod. So what I did is I put this shelf up high enough, or as high as possible, without making contact with this, and I buzzed just a little bit off the top of this. So what I plan on doing is, in this area here, I'm going to have a spacer that spaces the recoil spring back and enough travel that you only need about 50 thousandths for the firing pin travel. So I'm going to have a transfer pin leg that drops down This is going to be drilled, slotted, you know, that's up and coming. The only problem I had with this is when this travels back to reset the hammer, the hammer doesn't catch flush with this. You can see that right there is flush, and it needs about 100 thousandths to go down to reset it. So what I had to do to facilitate that, you can see the slot I milled in the front of the grip frame, and what I did is I took a corresponding piece of key stock. It's 130 thousandths projected up. This will slide back and reset the hammer. That way, yeah, you can't go up any higher, and that's a good way to get around that issue. The other thing that's up and coming now that my fire control group is pretty well done is when this goes all the way back, my transfer pin, or the bar, whatever you want to call it, it's going to ride in this area. So you got a small pocket, a small window back in this trigger section. So this thing's fully back, you have a very limited amount of space, and that's where the transfer pin for my firing pin is going to ride. So that's my next step now that this is all done with my denials and everything's working good here. Okay, this is with the receiver back on the action and slide and everything's in. You can see the key stock. This is just a piece of normal 5/16 square key stock. What I did is when I decided or determined how much height was needed to reset the hammer, I milled this down and I put a slot in the bottom of this slide, a nice press fit to press this thing in. It's TIG welded with stainless filler on both sides, and I have the slot in this, but you can see when this thing slides back, it clears the hole in the grip frame. I don't know if you can see that. And this is a slot that the hammer resets in. When this is pinned in here, you know, the hammer, this is the reset section, but if you're going to do this, you want the length of this key stock shorter than coming back and hitting the back of this receiver. You only need enough to reset the hammer. So, let's see if we can demonstrate this. So the hammer's in the fire position. This would go back under recoil. Drops the hammer. Resets. Drops it. So that's where I'm at so far. So far everything's coming together really, really well. I like the way this is fitting, and I'm looking forward to getting the home stretch of this and getting the firing pin cut, my transfer pin assembly. So that's it for now, and more to come.